okay. You're not sharing. Sit on your phone the whole time. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I call to order the May 16th, 2022 Loudon County Board of Supervisors Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committees meeting. This room has a hearing loop. If you need hearing assistance, switch your hearing aids to telecoil mode. If you need a headset, we have those available as well. Please see the clerk to request one. So first of all, I just really want to say thank you to everybody for all of your hard work on this, and my deepest apologies for having to cancel the last meeting, because I know staff went to a lot of trouble to try and get everyone together for the April 21st meeting, and unfortunately I was sick and it had to be canceled. And again, I appreciate staff pulling together all the appropriate speakers and bodies to come together again. If anyone has a question about what a heavy lift this has been, they just need to actually lift the binder that we all received. So this is what we're trying to do here, and make sure that the county is leveraging our boards, commissions, and committees to operate more efficiently and to serve the county better. For today's meeting, we have representatives in the room for those advisory bodies the committee invited to participate. And in the room, we have our Art Advisory Committee folks, Community Criminal Justice Board, Community Services Board, and the Housing Advisory Board. Staff liaisons for all of the majority of the remaining advisory bodies are participating remotely via WebEx, and they are available for the first 30 minutes of today's meeting to answer any follow-up questions the committee might have. Please note that an updated packet was distributed from the rescheduled April 21st meeting, and staff will go over those updates during our presentation. So this is how I would like to organize ourselves. First, we're going to do the 30 minutes of questions for the committees that are online, if any of my committee members have questions for those. And Charles, can you just let us know who's online, or the ones that we think we have questions for online?
If you look at the section of your staff report that covers the responses, and this would be pages 4 through 17.
Okay.
Then those advisory bodies that were related to those responses, they're available online.
Okay, great. And then in the room, and I'd like to go in this order. In the room, we have Housing Advisory Board, Community Criminal Justice Board, Community Services Board, Art Advisory, and then we also have Buddy Reiser for talking about REDC. And so we'll try to go in that order. And then lastly, committee members, I'd like us to discuss, if we have any need to discuss the recommendations that were in the packet, I'd like us to go ahead and vote on the motion that staff move forward with those recommendations under number 4, and then work on further recommendations as we discuss this afternoon. So with that, do my committee colleagues have any questions for the members of staff and committees that are online?
Madam Chair, the sections 5 and 6, the Family Service Advisory Board and the Disability Services Board, they're online, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can they hear me?
I think we need to specify which one we have a question for.
The Disability Services Board first.
Okay, great. Go ahead for Disability Services Board.
You guys are there? You can hear me?
Yes, I'm online. I can hear you.
Okay. There you are. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi.
First of all, I do understand that the BMI is coming back in June or July that we talked about, so thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that's been done on that. Just a couple of questions. So, and this may be if everyone's online and they can hear me, this may be a question for everyone online. So, right now, because we're not in the state of emergency anymore, the ability to meet virtually without having a quorum in the room has now expired. And I am hearing from boards and commissions and committees that's that's been an issue. And in fact, we heard from, was it Yaz? When the Commission on Youth actually asked us about that. And the first thing I want to say is that's not our choice. That's a state mandate. And so it's not our choice. But I would like to get feedback on that for next year's legislative agenda, because we have been saying for a long time that for the most part, there is no rational reason to not allow commissions, committees to have a quorum online. And actually what we found is that it's harder for women, especially moms of young children, to make the meetings because of childcare issues. And so there's nothing we can do about it today. But if you have those thoughts and feelings and any stats on how, if you're losing people because they can't get online, they have to be in person, we want to know that for next year's legislative session. That's the first thing. I want specifically for the DSB board to know, did you all discuss the issue of lowering the number of people who are members of the DSB board in order to facilitate a quorum? And for you and for all the boards, is a quorum easier to facilitate if you're allowed to attend virtually? But going to the lower number, because I know the DSB board, you really do have those slots for specific differing abilities and organizations and that type of thing. So that number didn't come out the blue, right? And if you're lowering that number just so you can get quorum and not because you don't need those people to have the voices heard, I'm concerned about that. Now, if you feel like you don't need the people's voices and you have enough, the different organizations are being represented, okay. But if you're lowering it just to get quorum, that's something I'd like to know, and I would be kind of concerned about that. So, what is you all's thoughts about going into a lower number for the DSB board?
Thank you for the question. Well, actually, we do not have any DSB member online today, but based on the conversation we had at the last meeting that they approved the changes to the bylaw, I would say definitely many members looking for the virtual meeting, and they were hoping to be able to meet virtually, but we know that it's not the option. However, the reason that they decided to reduce the number is not because of I just want to mention that DSB they're all at large and we do not have any specific membership. The concern that the DSB chair, Ms. Lori Daly had, it was because of to lower the number, it was because of having active members. And her concern, and actually the rest of the group that they all voted, was because if they have a active member, they want a member to attend the meeting regularly. And if they want to miss the meeting, they should communicate with the rest of the group or at least with the chair. So,
but would those members be more active? Would the members be more active if they could participate virtually? Or do you?
Well,
and if you don't know the answer because you got to take it back to the board, that's fine. But that's kind of my question. That's where I'm. That's where I want. I mean, I need to know if you all are. Mm-hmm. If you would go to a lower number because people who would be active otherwise can't if you have to be in person versus virtually. Because
right.
This board was very intentional about the numbers because the numbers represent different abilities and different organizations. It wasn't just that number didn't come out of the sky.
Right. And just to answer your question, this board never had the full 15 members. So that's another issue that they...
That's an answer then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe the number was too high then.
Yeah. And the other things that they consider, and that's their concern, that they'd appreciate when Board of Supervisors appoint any members, they make sure that that person intentionally wants to be appointed to the Disability Services Board, and they're willing to attend the meeting regularly.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
So let me say back to you, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, what I think I just heard you say, to make sure I have it right. So what I think I just heard you say is because you never even reached the full number of 15, you're actually fine going down to a lesser number, whether or not you're doing it virtually or in person. Do I got that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to let you know, when we met virtually, we only had 2 issues that we didn't have a full quorum. So just FYI.
But you still never have 15 members all in all anyway.
Correct.
What is a quorum for 15 members? How many do you need? 9?
We need 51%, which is 8 members.
8 members. Okay. All right. Okay. You answered my question. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I can wait till Ms. Glass goes for my second question if you'd like to go to Ms. Glass next.
Which advisory body is it about?
The Family Services.
Oh, we can go to Family Services Advisory Board next. That's fine.
Yeah. Is that okay? Are you all there? Family Services.
I am. Thank you.
Hi. How you doing?
Well, thanks.
Good to see you. So I actually I can hear myself talk, and it is not pleasant. I actually recently had a meeting with the chair of the CSB board, Patty Morrissey, and one of the things she told me is that they and I've known Ms. Morrissey for a long time. She does an excellent job. But one of the things she told me is that the CSB board has found trainings to go to for the board to get information on, because that's a state required board, what they should be doing, how they should be doing. They have like a whole thing they do. She thought it was really very helpful for the board, one, to gel together, but also to go to the trainings to get more information about their, not just their goals in Loudoun County, but their goals kind of overall. So I was wondering, Ina, do you all have any of those trainings for Family Services Board? I'm asking because the CSB Board, Family Services Board, the Disability Board, those are the boards that probably have the highest, for lack of a better word, burnout right now, and will have the highest burnout over the next couple of years. And so anything that we can do to support you in your mission, in your goals, that type of thing. So Ms. Morrissey and I met for lunch. We talked for a very long time. She told me about all the trainings that they had attended, both she, but members of her board as well. She is the chair, but members of the board as well. And I just wasn't sure if you were doing that. I know the DSB board does have trainings, and I know the CSB board has trainings, but I didn't know if the Family Services Board had trainings.
Thank you, Madam. Actually, not Madam Chair on this one. Sorry.
I'm always Madam Chair.
So true. Yes, and is really the answer. So the State Department of Social Services has implemented over the past year, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2, but anytime there is a new member to any of the family service advisory boards, there is a state training that they go through, as well as a notebook, for lack of better words, with all their requirements. Having said that, what you're describing, if I'm not mistaken, is something much more local, which is a wonderful idea. And I'd be more than happy to speak with the CSB about that, because it sounds very interesting. I think it would be very helpful for the Family Service Advisory Board.
I think it would too. And again, as I said, over the next 2 years, DSB, Family Service, CSB are going to be, I think, the boards that are emotionally taxed the most. And so anything we can do to gel the boards, to get you guys training would be really good, really helpful. And actually, I was joking. I'm actually, when somebody else is holding the gavel, I'm Chair Randall, and Ms. Brixman is Madam Chair for this meeting. Absolutely, she is. So thank you very much, Ina. And get back to me and let me know, right? Get back to me and let me know, because I think the other thing we can do is look for those trainings, right? Look for that, for those opportunities for you all to have. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Randall. What I'm hearing then Supervisor Glass, did you have any questions either for FSAB or CSB?
No, not for them, but I do have.
What I'm hearing out of that line of questioning is that our committee likely agrees that we should make a recommendation to reduce to 11 members. The Disability Services Board. I heard that as well. Yeah, okay, thank you. And FSB, FSB, I don't think you really have any, maybe in the bylaws they could.
She said she's going to get back to me and see if there's opportunities after talking to the CSB, talking to Ms. Graham and maybe talking to Ms. Morrissey.
Perfect. And I think likely to close out our online folks is Supervisor Glass had some questions for the Equalization Board of BOE. Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like staff to look into and make a suggestion on increasing the stipend of the Board of Equalization members. Based on the funding chart provided on page 13 of our packet, the BOE has $4,000 budgeted for member stipends. However, last year the members were only paid $112 each, meaning that there was over $3,000 extra in the budget. I think there's room for the stipends to be increased without increasing the BOE's budget. So I would like staff to make a recommendation on the best amount to increase the stipends. And in addition to the BOE stipends, I would like some clarity on their term length and start times. On pages 7 and 8 of our packet, it states that the BOE members are to be appointed to fill the remainder of the term if a vacancy is created. However, the current member terms are advertised online at different times of the year. I had, for example, there was some that ended December 31st, and then there was one that ended March 15th. There was one that ended February 18th, and then there was another one that ended December 1st. So the current members they're advertised at different times. So, which seems like when a new member was appointed to fill the vacancy, the term length was reset. So, am I interpreting this correctly? And should the advertised term timeframes be adjusted online?
So, I can start there. I'm not sure about their current vacancies, but what you're describing, this is what I think that reason is. The BOE was set up to have staggered terms. Mm-hmm. So if each of their terms are ending at a different time, that is probably the reason why, because they have staggered terms. Mm-hmm. And then generally speaking, with most, if not all boards, the rule is, particularly for those that are authorized by the Virginia Code, that if someone leaves a board for whatever reason in the middle of their term, someone is reappointed to fill only the remainder of that person's term rather than having a full-length term. So if you had someone under a staggered term situation who perhaps their term was supposed to end December 31, 2023, and they have retired early or resigned early for whatever reason, then the vacancy would be just to fill the remainder of that. Whereas you may have another vacancy that is because someone's term has naturally expired, and so then there's an appointment for a full term in that instance. So I'm not sure about exactly the vacancies they have right now, but my guess is that what I just said is what accounts for that.
Okay. I just thought it was, I understand that if someone, ends, but I thought it would end of the year, but, one would end in 23, 25, whatever. It would still end at the end of the year, but you're saying that if someone leaves, and it depends on when they left and they're ending that term for that person.
We should have staff online from Department of Finance and Budget who might want to weigh in on the term issue first.
That would be great.
Hi, yes, this is Rebecca. I am the administrative liaison for the Board of Equalization. As far as the terms go, it is not a Virginia statute. However, it was set up to be January 1st through December 31st. And when it was still under the circuit courts, no matter when the new member came on board, her term was always January 1st through December 31st. either the 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year terms. And the terms are staggered that way so that we don't have every single member term expiring at the same time. I did speak with the Virginia Board of Taxation, and this is not a Virginia statute. And since the Board of Supervisors actually appoints the members, however the board decides, they can set up the terms to be either when the new person was appointed or January 1st through December 31st.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then on the stipend comment, we would take that as if you are asking to look into that and come back with a recommendation for the final set of recommendations.
Yes.
Okay.
Please. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask you one question, please?
Absolutely.
You intend to have REDC after this section, right? You're going to have them.
No, after this section, I'm going to see if we have anything for anybody else in the room. So we'll be doing Housing Advisory Board first, Community Criminal Justice Board first, Community Services Board.
Then is this just the appropriate time to ask REDC question?
No.
No. Okay. Well, tell me when then.
We're going to probably have Buddy come up to the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me when.
Okay. Is that good on equalization? I think those are all of our questions for online bodies. Yes, sir.
Just one question. Back to the DSB discussion. Ms. Babudafar from staff was commenting on their quorum bylaw requirement of 51%, and that they never really had the full 15 membership slate. So I just wanted to get back to Chair Randall. Were you satisfied with that? Is there any other additional information that you need? Because we believe they will move forward to revise their bylaws to reflect 11.
That was my understanding as well.
Okay.
That was my understanding that they would move forward to do that. Yeah.
Okay, and then the first comment about the ability to meet quorum and attendance issues, we're going to actually message that to all of the advisory bodies. And
I would very much appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
I very much appreciate that, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, because it is a question for our legislative agenda when we get there. This next year, of whether or not we should ask for that to be changed in the General Assembly, that our advisory bodies can have the options of virtual meetings. It's amazing to me that they can't, but it would be a request that we would make.
It's interesting. I saw Elizabeth Bennett Parker over the weekend and asked her about that bill, and it was incredibly confusing as to how it actually ended up coming through, and what we have permission to do or not to do, and it's not a lot. Mr. Yud, if we think that Disability Services Board is already going to do that in their bylaws, does it need to be a recommendation out of this committee?
We think it'd be helpful,
Okay.
just given the timing of how this work is concluding, that if it did show up in an overall recommendation, that would
Perfect.
help the record.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I think those are all the questions we had for folks that are online. So, wow, and we're 4 minutes early for that section. Committee members, does anybody have questions for the Community Criminal Justice Board based on responses in the item or any general questions? Supervisor Glass. Oh, well, let's have them. There's people here in the room. Please come down if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, Mrs. Seidenor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Would you mind introducing yourselves real quick?
Sure, I'm Chip Sullivan, Director of Loudon County. Better? I'm Chip Sullivan, the Director of Loudon County Community Corrections.
Guy Patuchek, I'm the chair of the CCJB
Great. Thank you.
My name's Ryan Moody. I am the staff liaison for CCJB.
Okay, thank you so much, and pardon me. I just wanted to make sure we all knew who everybody was. So, Supervisor Glass.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming out here today. I really appreciate. Can you describe the general mission and goal of the CCJB and what it oversees and advises on?
So the Community Criminal Justice Board is an advisory board to community corrections. So there's a very good mix of both statutory and appointed members. And the goal of course, is to provide good recommendations to us as far as policy and procedure moving forward.
I have a question. Does the CCJB have a relationship with our court system, the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, and the Sheriff's Office?
Yes. The courts are statutory members. The Commonwealth Attorney or some person from her office is a statutory member, and the Sheriff's Office is also a statutory member.
Okay. All right. And are there any projects the CCJB is working on, and are there any areas that you think that you could use assistance from the board?
Right now, of course, our biggest project is the impact study on legalization of marijuana in Loudon. That's actually winding down. We should be moving forward with that shortly and have it to the board by the end of June, as promised. And beyond that, I don't think we need any support from the board in terms of any other projects.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chair Randall.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming. Secondly, for that issue, I would like, when you all are, as you're winding down that study, to there's a shop down the street here in Leesburg that has a sign in their window that says that they sell Delta 9. Delta 9 is not part of the legalization of marijuana. It is literally illegal to sell it. There is a sign in the window saying that they are selling it. It is literally illegal to sell it, and they are advertising that they are selling it. What is that? I mean, I've just never, like literally they're advertising in the window that they're doing something illegal. Can we maybe, can that be addressed? Yes, Chip.
In terms of that, I would defer to the Sheriff's Office. But
or the Leesburg Police Department, yeah.
But one thing that I would add is this General Assembly session, there were a lot of bills that were out to try to regulate the sale of marijuana. And actually, one of those bills was targeted to the sale of products in gas stations that sell, say, Delta 8, and actually some of the studies actually tested those the products and found that there was a wide range of concentration of
THC levels.
Exactly. Some were higher, some were lower than advertised on the package.
But it's still not legal to sell.
Correct.
Okay, right? I mean, it's still not legal to sell.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, listen, if we're going to make, this has been in this window of this place for, I don't know, about before this session. So we're legalizing marijuana. Okay, but let's focus on what's actually legal, right, in that. So I in my opinion. The other question I have is, the CCJB, do you guys have any, and if you do, can I have an update of any reentry programs that you are doing? I have been concerned that that I believe there could be more support for people exiting the system, especially people who are exiting who've been in there for a considerable amount of time. When I was working in the jail, we call them football years. Anything over 14 years with football numbers. So once you start getting football numbers, you get out and your life is very different. And of course, the first thing everybody wants is a cell phone. That's like the mecca of what you need to have when you get out of jail is a cell phone. It's just insane. But tell me about your reentry programs, because I believe, and it may be that because of COVID, we had a lot of early releases. And so it could be that the system was tapped because we had so many early releases. But what kind of reentry programs are we looking at in Loudoun County?
Well, one thing that I would say is our office, along with state probation and parole, have actually partnered and restarted the Loudoun County Reentry Council.
You restarted it?
Yes.
Okay.
And we actually restarted that in November.
Okay.
And we have been meeting.
Okay, that makes sense.
Every other month. We just met last week.
Do you have a former inmate on that council?
I do not believe so.
It might be helpful. Mm-hmm. It might be helpful, just because that they might know exactly what they would have needed upon exiting the system. So, all right, that's good to know. So you did restart it. We started it last November, and you all meet monthly. Is that correct?
It's bi-monthly.
You meet bi-monthly. Oh, okay. And then my last and most important question is, what's up with the cookout?
We were actually planning it for early June.
I'm gonna need a date.
Well, but then COVID numbers started.
Oh, come on! I'll get a plate to go.
So we will look at it for June. If not June, then early fall.
Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No problem. Just a quick question. Since the emergency order was lifted, are you able to make quorum?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then do you have any recommendations that you would like to see out of this project for your board as far as bylaws or membership or anything like that? Or is everything good?
The only thing that I would add is I believe this is something that you may have mentioned in one of the previous meetings that I attended, was the question about CCJB members, their terms coincide with your guys' terms. And the question was, do you maybe offset it a year? So that, because generally what happens is December 31st, so the December meeting after the election, we have a meeting, but then we don't have a meeting again until March, April, to give you guys a chance to appoint new members. This particular year, we ended up, I think there was only 2 people who were reappointments. Everyone else were new members. And so that could possibly be helpful if that was something that you guys were interested in doing. But
so sorry, which would be helpful? Staggered terms or all starting at the same time? Or
I think all starting at the same time is okay. I think just with their terms following your guys' terms, it's basically been a gap of several months that we don't have a meeting while we give you guys an opportunity to appoint members.
Okay.
Or just clarifying that, for example, Chair Randall, you nominated Mr. Patuchek, that he would continue to serve in his position until a new person was confirmed.
Okay, we might be able to do that. That might make sense if we change the membership to extend until the reappointments in the new term come on board.
That would probably.
Does that make sense, Mr. Yad?
Yeah, we'll look at that closely for CCJB. For many advisory bodies, the member would serve until the new appointment is made. So it's sometimes an issue of being more clear in the bylaws than not. So we will follow up on that.
That would be awesome. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. I think that's everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. The Community Services Board is here. Do any of my colleagues have questions for the Community Services Board?
I do not, Madam Chair, because I had a long meeting with the Community Services Board Chair, so I'm fine with my
Okay,
answers for her.
all right.
Yeah.
Supervisor Glass?
I do not have any questions.
Okay, I think we're good unless you have something you want to tell us that you need changed. Go do your work. I know you're very busy. Okay, Housing Advisory Board. Let's talk. Come on down. Actually, I'm very excited about this one. I have a bunch of questions, but colleagues, do you have anything to begin with?
Again, Madam Chair, I meet with the staff. In fact, I had a meeting today with Miss Turner. So I don't, because I've asked a lot of questions about this already.
Okay.
And the information I need, Miss Turner is getting for me. Thank you, though.
Phenomenal. Okay. I do have a few questions because I think that we're going to have some recommendations coming out of this committee. Would you mind introducing yourselves? And thank you for coming.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Regan. I'm the staff liaison for the Housing Advisory Board with the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Excellent.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Russell, and I am chair of the Housing Advisory Board.
Welcome.
Sarah Coyle-Letro, Acting Director, Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, and thank you so much for coming. And I'm so glad you're still here. I had a freak out when when we had to cancel the April 21st because I really wanted you to be here. Okay, so I wanted to ask a few questions about perhaps realigning the mission and the role of the Housing Advisory Board, given that we now have an unmet housing needs strategic plan in the county. So given the amount of progress the county has made on housing issues and with the recent adoption of the unmet housing needs strategic plan and assessment of the purpose and makeup of the HAB to ensure relevance, I think is a reasonable approach now. How do you think the HAB could better support the unmet housing needs strategic plan?
I was looking at the couple examples that were provided, and I thought for Fairfax, where they were really doing some heavy lifting in terms of supporting the perhaps the legislative agenda, would be something. It would take a little bit of, I think, reorganizing how we operate. But what I've found over time on the Housing Advisory Board, there's a lot of knowledge about what's going on in other places that I think could be leveraged to help the board, make sure we're getting done what we've set out as goals in the strategic plan. And a suggestion along those lines would be a board member who was an expert in housing policy. So to bring, because I think we're fairly well aware of like the different kinds of needs that are coming up in the community, and we hear a lot about them. What we don't hear a lot about is solutions, things that have been tried in other communities and problems they have solved, impediments to that. And I've found that interacting with, say, a researcher or professor of housing policy can really be of big benefit to the county.
I like that idea. Go ahead, Ms. Etra.
I just wanted to add to that answer. So the plan has 5 objectives, with the first objective being to create an integrated and coordinated network. And so there's an opportunity with your Housing Advisory Board to ensure that the full housing continuum is represented, so that you're considering the housing needs along that continuum, and there are stakeholders at the table that can speak to those needs, as well as a broader, more diverse way to look at solutions. The other part of it, and the Housing Advisory Board has had some experience with this, so they oversaw the housing needs assessment that really form the basis for the housing data used in the 2019 comp plan, and then again in the unmet housing needs strategic plan. But the unmet housing needs strategic plan has several important studies, like the location efficiency study of housing related to transit and transportation, and some of the other data. So for the board to be able to keep tabs on how we're addressing some of those issues in the county and how the data is changing over time could be another important duty that is similar to what the board has been doing, so consistent with their original purpose.
Excellent. You mentioned the representation of the full housing spectrum. So which housing stakeholder groups do you think could add insight to the strategic plan that may not be represented right now on the Housing Advisory Board? Of course, I'm thinking initially of New Virginia Majority and groups like that.
Right, and so in your item today, we did make some suggestions for the continuum of care. Mm-hmm. So that's a group of nonprofits and county agencies that represent the needs of the homeless in the county and those that are in unstable housing. So that would be good representation. The Disability Services Board, the plan focuses, for example, on universal design and accessibility. So you could certainly get that aspect as part of the discussion, as well as the Family Services Advisory Board. So they know about program needs that are necessary to support housing. So that would be another aspect. And I don't know, Brian or Jim, if you have anything you want to add. Those were just a few we thought of.
Yeah, and just as an example, so Fairfax County and Prince George's County, Maryland, have a similar body that oversees their county-wide housing plan, and their representation on each of those bodies are very specific. So there's about 15 or 18, and there is a specific spot for each of those 15 or 18, whereas the county's Housing Advisory Board keeps it fairly generic, where each member should have a pretty good background in either housing policy or real estate or whatever the case is. So looking at the two other bodies, they get a lot more in detail and specific than the county's current board.
So that kind of dovetails or basically answers my very next question, and that is whether you think it would be better to have seats that have assigned distinct representation, to fill. So I think the answer on that is yes. And the other question I had, would it be logical, do you think, to have a representative with an expertise in equity and inclusion as a specific seat on the board? I know that you're saying Disability Services Board and maybe FSAB, but what do you think about the idea of having a specific seat on the board that would look at equity and inclusion in our housing policy?
Again, I would say that I think an objective of your unmet housing needs plan is to have an integrated and comprehensive view of housing and how all the parts fit together, as opposed to housing being something separate. So to have a dedicated seat for someone to look at the big picture and inclusiveness in the community, I think would be a value add to the board. I don't want to put words in your mouth, though, Jim. If you
was coming down.
want to add anything?
Did you want to say something, Ms. Turner, please?
Thank you. The Office of Equity and Inclusion would serve as staff support for a lot of our different boards, including this one. Okay. So you don't necessarily, I don't think that you necessarily need to have a dedicated seat.
Okay.
Because we have that internal, and we're always constantly we'll always be reaching out to the Office of Equity and Inclusion.
Okay, great. I mean, one of my goals here is to reduce the numbers of seats on many, many boards. Yes. So if you thank you for that, because if you think that we can cover it in another way, then I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. So as you mentioned, I think that you believe, Ms. Etro, that it would be strategic and efficient for the purpose of the Housing Advisory Board to be more directly related to the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan implementation. So how do you think we can better align the Housing Advisory Board work and or better advise those in the county who are working on the strategic plan?
A couple of things, and if I would, back up to just remind you that the Housing Advisory Board was formed at a time when the board and the county were in a different place in terms of how they were looking at housing issues, and the board has done a lot of work in that time frame. And things have evolved and grown. And so your perspective is very different from when the Housing Advisory Board was formed. So it makes sense to look at it and have it align. You have much more specific direction, for example, in your Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan. So a few things. One is there will be regular reporting to the Transportation and Land Use Committee. And so keeping the Housing Advisory Board updated on how the housing programs are doing, as well as new program development. One thing that Mr. Russell mentioned is having an expert who could talk about best practices and where there are opportunities. That would be a way to bring, ideas to the table and new program development, which will be a big focus of the housing staff over the next few years as part of the implementation. So certainly those issues, how the production is going, so what the numbers are in terms of what's being produced, as well as the data, as I said, keeping it current, looking at things from different perspectives as was done for the plan, like looking at location efficiency of housing, for example, could be another area that the board can help the plan be implemented and be current and real with the work that's being done.
Excellent, thank you. My next question was, do we think that we need to rewrite the bylaws of Housing Advisory Board in order to accomplish this mission? And I think that we probably need to take a look at the bylaws to realign them with what would be a mission of helping the county meet the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan goals. And even I wrote down that there's some 130 action items in the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan. So in other words, the Housing Advisory Board can help keep us apprised and accountable and making sure that those tasks are accomplished. I really like the idea of, I know that we can't model everything exactly after what Fairfax County is doing. We're in a little bit of a different place, I'm sure, because I think they're already building their own, housing. But they do meet once a quarter, and it sounds like a quarterly update on the progress of the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan would serve you well, would serve the housing office well. Do you think that would be a reasonable timing and time frame for that?
Yes, so in terms of quarterly meetings, yes, and that could coincide nicely with quarterly reports to the Transportation and Land Use Committee, which the department is providing.
Great. Okay. We can probably make that recommendation then. And then do you think that, actually, you just answered that question. So I think I'm finished with my questions. Do my colleague, you turn on your light. So
I did, and thank you, Madam Chair. As you were speaking, I did think of one question I'd like to ask, and you may not have the answer to this right now, but if you like all want to take it back and have a discussion. Recently, we had a developer who, instead of doing the number of accessible, affordable units that is required, he did a certain amount, and then he did cash in lieu. So he gave us money, cash, so that we could do with it what we wanted to, whether it was, into the housing trust fund or into any other needs for housing. And when we figured out the money, we realized that the cash would actually be able to be of assistance to more families than would have been served had he done the housing. Now, obviously, we don't want to do that all the time. We want developers to, to at least give some portion of the housing that is required. But over the years, I have asked developers to be inventive in how we get to that unmet housing need. And so one question I'd like you to take back to the board, if possible, is what is you all's opinion of cash in lieu or land in lieu? So whether they give cash in lieu of attainable homes or land somewhere else to build. What is your thoughts on that? I know how I felt about it, and I believe it was either 8-1 vote or a 7-2 vote. It did pass, but I'm just we probably should have reached out to you while that was going on and to ask that question. But I would like you all's opinion on what you think about that. So thank you very much, and thank you for what you're all doing. This is the housing questions are very hard questions. It's a high hill to climb. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion, and the appreciation of how much we need the whole housing stock is hard to get past people and help people understand what we're trying to do. So I know that particularly you all's committee is a very heavy lift. I do appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sure, Mr. Yed.
Before they leave, there was a discussion in attachment 2 regarding the CDBG process modifications.
Yes.
And I believe they offered that for the committee's input, if you have any.
Was that written as a recommendation yet, or was it just in the item?
It's just in that memo in the item. So if you'd like it included in a recommendation, we can do so.
I absolutely support that, and I understand that you've had already conversations with FSAB that you will continue to work together, but the workload would go over to housing. Do you want to comment a little bit on that for my colleagues?
Sure. So I know that, I'm not sure if Ms. Fernandez is on the line anymore, but she did bring that recommendation to the Family Services Advisory Board. And there was no objection to transferring that responsibility from Family Services to the Housing Advisory Board. And the Housing Advisory Board also last week, I believe so, did not have any objection to having that as part of the HAB as well.
Okay, fantastic. I think that will help with efficiency. And I am fully in support of our committee recommending that, and I'm hearing no objection. So sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Yed, so much for reminding me of that. So I think if I might actually stay there for just a second, I'm going to sort of summarize what I think we're hearing as recommendations for the Housing Advisory Board so that staff can work on it for the next item, and that is that the Housing Advisory Board bylaws and membership align with the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan, that we include the 5 goals and the action items of the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan as part of the overall mission and scope for the Housing Advisory Board. The Housing Advisory Board would meet quarterly and report out on data and success against the Unmet Housing Needs Strategic Plan. That we would include stakeholder groups, as mentioned by Ms. Etro, to include an expert that can advise us on national and successful and maybe even unsuccessful policies from around the nation and maybe even globally that have helped other jurisdictions. And hopefully we can find somebody like that. We have actually 3 universities in our county. So between Mason and George GW and Nova, hopefully we could find somebody that would be willing to help us with that endeavor. Am I missing any of, and that we would look at the Fairfax County Affordable Housing Advisory Council as a stepping off point, so to speak, to take what we think could apply to Loudoun County out of what they've done, to see where it would fit and how we can adopt those best practices that have worked already in Virginia, because they are under the same General Assembly and state law constraints that we are, and we know that sometimes that can...
Except we're better than Fairfax County in every way. Otherwise, good.
And we can talk a little bit more. Do you think that fulfills enough for staff to start working on a recommendation for the June 21st meeting? June 21st, yeah.
June 21st,
and would you
yes.
guys have any comments? Did I miss anything kind of as an umbrella recommendation from this committee? Good?
We're good.
Fantastic. I am so excited about this. I think that this really meets the objective of this committee, and that is to help our advisory bodies and committees and commissions work more efficiently and better advise us in the county government. So thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks, Sarah, for working with me on this over the past couple of months to really understand what is needed in your office. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. So we also have, let's do art advisory. Committee members, do you have any questions or comments on the item that was in our board packet? Anything else to say but yay, let's do it? Just kidding. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Yeah, well, first of all, yay, let's do it. And secondly, thank you for what you've been doing. I know you've been in this building and in my office and working with Sarah Tuggle for weeks now, and what I feel like you've been doing and what you have been doing is kind of what's the word? You've been logging what we have in our art supply. You've been putting it down so we know what we have, so we don't kind of lose the art. You've been making it more professional, more official. We really should have been doing this for years, and I know that you've come in 3 times and you're still not finished with it, because it's a lot of work to find it all, where to come from, who gave it to us, all that type of stuff. What's the right word for what you're doing?
It's cataloging.
Cataloging the art. Thank you. And it's been a very, very heavy lift. And I cannot. I mean, you were just up there a couple of days ago when you got through with probably just a third of what you still have left to do. And so I had no idea how much work it was going to be, and you all are just getting through it. And so thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
After our last meeting, Mr. Hemsley said something to me, and I didn't know this, and so I'm going to just ask you what you think. He said to me that there is a difference between the Art Advisory Commission, which you all are, and what we might call Art in Public Places Commission. There's a difference. And so he was kind of explaining it to me, and I guess I understand that generally. What I have been describing that I think we should do with some of the art, would that better sit under Art in Public Places? Would that sit under Art Advisory, having to go out on tour, going to libraries, going to schools, that type of thing? Do we need to be doing something different than just what the Art Advisory Commission, not just what, but what the Art Advisory Commission does? Does that fall under Art in Public Places? That's my first question. Then I have another question.
I guess it depends on how you see the mission of the Art Advisory Committee, which has been limited primarily to the works of art in this building.
What do you think is what do you think? Because you and I have had this discussion. What I know about art is I love to look at it and it makes me feel good. That's what I know about art. But it, because we can increase your scope, right? I mean, that we have the ability to do that, so we can increase the scope of the Art Advisory Commission and not make a new art in public places. But I don't know what you all think. Or maybe art in public places as a subcommittee of the Art Advisory Commission. I don't know.
I think that the Art Advisory Committee right now, what we do, could be considered part of an art in public places because this building is a public place.
Mm-hmm.
And you're suggesting moving the works owned by the county out to other places that are public and making them accessible. But typically, I think art in public places refers to possibly all of the art that would be in parks, and I know we have some at Franklin Park and elsewhere, and it could also be, I guess, some performance pieces and things like that. So in that respect, I think that what we're doing now as a committee could be under that bigger umbrella that you've been talking about. Does that make sense?
Well, actually, I was going to say, Madam Chair, if I might, what I should have done before we started questioning was let Mr. Torpy talk a little bit about the plan and
sounds like a great plan. Okay,
because it's really a phenomenal idea, and I think that might answer the question.
And then I have another question, but let's do that first because you may answer
sorry
all
about
my
that,
questions.
Mr. Torpy.
No, that's no problem at all. I'll jump down in my opening remarks then and go, no, it's all good. Just to give a kind of a history of things, and this is all in your item, the Art Advisory Committee, as Ms. Nichols was talking about, was established a long time ago and has evolved over time, but has primarily recently been focused here. And then also with Ms. Bracy becoming the staff liaison, there's been some work out at the Art Center as well. But we recognize that there is a strong desire to go more towards a art in public spaces type program here. That, as we were just, as Ms. Nichols was just mentioning, really could incorporate what we have here, but have a much larger and much broader program. So back in the fall, when we came to this committee, the direction that we were given was to try and investigate that and look at how we could possibly go about doing that. We went and spoke with and investigated several jurisdictions that have gone through this process as well, to include other counties as well as cities. And one of the places that we kind of zeroed in on was Virginia Beach. One, because they're a jurisdiction within Virginia, but two, they're going through or recently started going through this process and kind of did some of the legwork of what it takes to get something like this off the ground. So we had the great opportunity to speak with them on multiple occasions. We looked at their art plan, their countywide art plan, and talked with them about the pros and cons and successes and areas where they could have done things differently along the way, and that kind of is the basis of some of our recommendations here today. So from that, what we are recommending to you today is an overall countywide arts plan be developed, and that is something that I think really could be a guiding principle or a guiding plan for the county as a whole. Loudon is very vibrant in the arts right now, but there's a lot of different groups that are participating in that. And with this countywide plan, we feel that by including those stakeholders, by including the Art Advisory Committee, by including staff, and more importantly, the public, in coming up with what the county wants as a countywide plan, really is going to help us as we move forward with things such as how we do public facilities, how we develop them in the future, how we do programming, how we do special events, and in making sure that where possible, arts can be incorporated into those discussions and into those activities that we have going on, so that everyone throughout the entire county has the opportunity to enjoy art and get the benefits of all the different types of art that we have. In addition to the countywide arts plan, one of the things that we, coming out of the master plan and things like that, we know that that takes time. We also recognize that the committee was recommending that we don't wait for certain things. And so we came up with some projects that we see, if approved, would be happening in parallel to the development of that plan, and ultimately could be incorporated into that plan, but would happen so that we have some new things that are out there that's kind of bringing attention to the art in Loudoun County. And the first being the relocation of some of the pieces that are a part of the inventory right now. That would be done working with the Art Advisory Committee. As you know, with some of the security changes, the public doesn't get to all of the floors here. And although we do see a need for that art to certain pieces to stay so that the county staff has the ability to enjoy that as well, but going through a process of identifying where we could relocate some of those art pieces so that it is easily accessible and viewed
rotate.
and rotate around. That's correct. One of the other things that we had talked about was looking at the judges and board of supervisors portraits that we have. That's a little bit different than art, but it is something that we think could be incorporated into some staff work with moving forward on that, as well as some of the gifts from the sister cities and other things that have been given to various board members. Whether those pieces would be deemed as art or just some other type of gift, we recognize that that would be some type of a display that could be rotated around also to take advantage of those things that have been given to the county or to the board members. Out in the lobby here, the Gallery 1 exhibit is one of the things that we recognize that if we're going to do this correctly and really draw attention to the arts, you need to have that gallery space. And so one of the projects would be establishing more formalized gallery space in some lobbies of either community centers or other public facilities so that we can do the great things that Ms. Bracy and the Art Advisory Committee has been doing out in the lobby. We always joke that I never see her out at the Art Center. It's always here at the
Me
lobby.
too.
When
Every time.
So, but by having additional places that could be quarterly rotated so that more people have the opportunity to enjoy the art as well. Third, and I got to be up front with you, we stole this idea from Arlington, but it's a great idea, and that's the art van program, and that is taking a van and outfitting it with the various types of supplies and equipment so that you really have an art on the go, if you will, type program, so that we can take that to events, take that to communities, take that even to after-school programs and things along those lines, with a focus of where art typically is not, trying to get into some of those communities and expand their exposure to the various types of art. And then finally, the Call for Sculptures project. If you have not been up to Franklin Park and seen what Ms. Bracy and the staff at the Art Center and the park have done up there, it's a phenomenal thing. It's within one of our garden areas. It's a sculpture walk. And essentially, it's been very well received. It's very popular. And the concept here is to expand that to other areas such as courtyard areas and garden areas that are already existing at county facilities, but utilizing this Call for Sculptures project in order to expand that successful program that we have out at Franklin countywide. Also, just in closing, as we mentioned earlier at the meeting this past fall, the concept is something that staff truly supports, but it is, I have to reiterate that it's something that we can't absorb right now with staffing and budget-wise. And we don't think that it's something that some of these recommendations would be appropriate to put on the Art Advisory Committee either, which is why you have the recommendations in the item for the program manager, the curator, the instructors, and then the enhancement dollars to expand all of those various programs. All said and done, and this is with staffing cost included, it's about $450,000 to do everything, and there's a breakout there in the item. And I think that completes my opening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Torpey. I apologize again. in my excitement to move forward so fast on this. But anyway, Madam Chair, more questions.
So I have so many questions. I'll try to narrow down the most important, and
I
then
need to turn on the timer.
yeah, we might. First of all, Ms. Bracy, I cannot say enough positive things about you. You're everywhere, and you do an amazingly good job. So thank you. And I haven't made up the Franklin Park, but I will. Art is, when I think about the things that I like to still accomplish in this position, I mean, art is right at the top of my list. I think, Loudon is lacking in art. And so if we're going to have a commission, I want to see this, someplace for the symphony to locate. I want an art center here in Loudon so badly, right? I just do a large art center where we can have performing arts and sculptures and all those types of things, and we don't have it. We don't have it yet. Mr. Turby, I really appreciate you saying what your limitations are, because often staff doesn't, and so that's important for us to know what the limitations are. Ms. Nichols, Mr. Torpy said that that some of these goals are beyond what the Art Commission. I think his verbiage is we don't want to quote put it on the Arts Commission unquote. Why don't we want to put it on the Arts Commission? I know how we don't want to put it on the Arts Commission as it's formed right now, but as we're paring down other commissions and committees, I can see the Arts Commission being the one that we pulse up and put, make a person on there who's from the symphony, and a person on there who's from, the Loudon Ballet, or a person on there, I don't think that the commission as it's formed right now is underused, but I think we're not thinking big enough of what the Arts Commission can be and how we can use it differently. I think they're doing an amazing job as they are, as who they are right now. But my gosh, arts commissions are large and encompasses so many different art disciplines that, why are we not looking at the Arts Commission as something we can grow and make larger, and so that we can, quote, put more on them, unquote.
Go ahead, Mr. Torby, but my understanding is pretty much this is what we're doing. It's just that the existing art committee, what they do is a slice of what is.
That's my point. That's my point. I'm not saying what the existing arts committee.
Go ahead, Mr.
You guys are
Torby.
doing great. Let me be clear. The existing art committee is doing a great job, and I understand that. But I think our vision for art in Loudon is much too narrow.
And I apologize if I misled or misspoke with regards to the role of the Art Advisory Committee. Where I was trying to go with that is a lot of the things that we're talking about are things that definitely need staff support for, and to be able to run those. And as we go through the countywide arts plan, which we think is definitely needed to set the direction and set those goals and priorities, I think after the countywide plan has been created and adopted, that's when we go back and look at how the Art Advisory Board can be reconstituted or
Expanded
evaluated to better support that.
They have more
countywide
subcommittees
plan.
that focus on different. Okay.
That said, I mean, something like the development and the management of a contractor doing a countywide plan and putting that all together, that needs a project manager to do that. That wouldn't be something that a committee would be able to do.
Sure.
Or I would not
understand that.
recommend. I mean,
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
could, but I would not recommend that. Same with some of the programming aspect. I see them feeding information into that, but the actual rubber hitting the road work of
Sure,
those things
sure,
being
I understand
implemented,
that.
that's where the
That makes sense.
staffing cost goes.
One last thing, Madam Chair. So the National Association of Counties has a arts committee in that organization. They do fantastic work. First of all, they have all this research of what art does in the community. The fact that it lowers suicide rates and mental health issues. It raises property values. It's just amazing when you have art in public places. But it also may be a good place to look for grant opportunities and that type of thing when the time comes. I know we're not there yet, but when the time comes, it may be a great resource to have. Let me just one more time, Madam Chair, reinstate what a great job I think you all are doing. How much I appreciate the hard work and cataloging, Ms. Nichols and Ms. Bracy. I just I appreciate you so much, and I almost want just to clone you all so we can just keep getting bigger and bigger with people like you who have not just an appreciation of art, but an understanding of art. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm going to have we'll do a motion. I'll go to Supervisor Glass in just a moment. I think what might be getting lost in translation is that once we have an arts plan, we will most certainly need some form of an art advisory body. And I think that art advisory body will probably take a slightly different form and maybe have some of the existing members on it to advise, but also have a bunch of other folks from the community, because the scope of our arts plan in Loudoun County is going to get bigger. Okay, go ahead, Supervisor Glass.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming out today. I appreciate it. So around this building, specifically in the display cabinets outside, there are several awards, plaques, and other objects that aren't traditionally considered art. However, they seem to be displayed as art. If the Art Advisory Committee or staff agree, I would like to see these things incorporated into the art public spaces concept. I think they're essentially art or objects meant for the public's viewing. I'm sure we have other things that we could, when we talk about rotating, could that also be something that is rotated with, with the art that we have here?
And I think that would be exactly what the plan would be all about, is gathering all that information and figuring out how that all gets incorporated together and coming up with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to add one thing, that when the board photos are incorporated into the art in public, as you had mentioned that before, I would like for the photos to be digitized as part of our preservation. And one other thing, a couple of weeks ago, I did go out to Franklin Park, and it was wonderful visiting there, and I forgot the gentleman who had toured us around the facility.
Les Thompson, he's our technical director.
Yes, Les Thompson. He was wonderful to speak with, and he had a wealth of knowledge. He had talked about all the things that you are doing, which I did not know, because the only time that I'd been to Franklin Farm was to get a COVID test in the parking lot. So I finally was there
Sounds like we have to have a
go
field trip.
and visit. So in this arts plan, there will be analysis on whether we should expand Franklin Park or build a dedicated performing arts center in Eastern Loudon, or are we looking at both things when we talk about expanding?
So the scope has not been developed yet. Obviously, we're talking concept right now of what it would be. I know one of the things that Ms. Bracy and I have discussed is looking at all different aspects of where we could do art, particularly in the East, whether or not to go back on one of the statements that Chairperson had made earlier with another committee, is there's 3 different universities that are here in Loudoun County, and is there an opportunity to partner with them as a way of expanding things along those lines? So we would look at all that, but again, the scope has not been developed yet, but we certainly could put that into one of the things to be evaluated.
So I also noticed, I know that's not my district, but I have a background in art and music and theater with me and my family, although it's not professional or anything, but
she can sing. She can sing. You should hear her.
The national anthem of Lovettsville.
I'll get my sister to do that. So when I visited the facility, they showed all of the advancements in, all the technology that's used there, that it's comparable to, professional equipment. But then the seats needed to be updated. That, there were some seats that were, kind of falling apart, and, in a few years they, would probably need to be updated. So I guess things like that, in that plan, I would hope that, it's, since it's a jewel in the western part of Loudon, I would like to hopefully, keep that in mind, that it's some things that we need to do to upgrade it. Thank you.
Certainly look at that. Yep, I'm working on that right now, as a matter of fact.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the work you've been doing on the Arts Committee. I really appreciate it as well. You mentioned that PRCS can't necessarily absorb this from a staffing perspective, but from a budget perspective, do we have surplus or the ability to, I guess what I'm getting at is, where are we getting the $451,000?
So the recommendation in the item was to utilize general fund for this year, and identify or use these as temporary staffing, and then we would come back as a request through the normal FY24 budget process to make those positions and the programs permanent.
So it's not an immediate full, it might have to be partially funded this year with general fund and then more in the 24 budget. Is that what you're saying?
The recommendation would be to do all of them.
Okay.
But that's obviously at the discretion of the board.
That would be my recommendation, to do all of them as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And with obviously what we feel to be the the priority is ensuring that the countywide plan gets started and done.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to go to a motion. I do have some more comments, but I'll do them inside the motion. And I did ask staff to time us when we're doing a motion on committee. So I move that the Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committees recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the county administrator be directed to begin the 4 short-term arts projects recommended in the May 16, 2022 Ad Hoc Committee action item to include temporary staff to support the projects. I further move that the Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committees recommend to the board that the county administrator be directed to contract for the development of a countywide arts plan and bring back the recommendations from that plan to the FY 2024 budget process.
Second, but I will have questions.
Thank you. Awesome. So I like I said, I can't be more excited about this. I really, I think that we've had growing pains in the county, and we are growing up in many ways as a county, and this is part of that process. I can't wait to see what the 4 projects accomplish that are going to be short term. I think that those are fantastic ideas. I love the idea of the van. And so I just really can't wait to see those get started. And another thing I did want to share, that I had a quick conversation with Beth Erickson about this from Visit Loudon, and she couldn't be more excited as well. She's getting ready to present her strategy, and board members are having briefings on those, I think, this week, and then it'll come to the full board. And she said this fits in so well with their upcoming strategy for Visit Loudon, and it's really going to help her once we get this arts program underway. And I think that it is just the beginning. I see a lot of opportunity for growth out of this, not just art in public spaces, but once we, confirm and realize what this has done for our county, for our mood, for our, for people wanting to come visit the county, for certain, amenities that we have here, we're just going to find that we want to do it more and more. And Chair Randall and I also attended a session at NACO about art and health. And so I think having this under PRCS is a phenomenal place to have it because, you know, PRCS works on health and helps our county get active and involved in so many ways. And so I think this is a perfect place for it right now. And anyway, I hope once it gets to the full board, we have also as much excitement for this as well. Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, will you please read the I further move part of your motion, because it's not in our package.
I see. Okay. I further move that the Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committees recommend to the board that the county administrator be directed to contract for the development of a countywide arts plan and bring back the recommendations from that plan to the FY 2024 budget process.
Okay, so, yeah.
It's in item 2. The full motion is in item 2 of.
Mr. Yett, is that how we want to? So I'm going to say what I think I'm hearing you say. So we're going to recommend to the full board that the.
Oh, I see what you. I think I understand your question. Would all of the recommendations of the art plan necessarily have to be part of the budget? It'd be those that had a financial implication,
Right, and
that
so
needed resources.
exactly. So I'm not sure that I don't know that that's the right motion for what we're trying to do, because we may need not that amount of money, and we don't know yet. So
Okay.
I think we have to restate that motion to actually know what we're trying to ask for.
I could offer where it says bring back the recommendation from that plan, bring back the recommendations regarding financial commitment from that plan to the FY 2024 budget process.
Financial commitment, financial need, something
Okay.
like, yeah, financial need.
Budget
would be-
needs
Yes,
or-
yes.
Okay.
Okay, would you accept that?
I totally accept
Okay,
that.
all right,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Did you have comments in the motion?
That's
Oh,
all I
okay,
have.
great.
I just want to change the motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Supervisor Glass?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm really thrilled of this concept. It's coming to fruition. I look forward to more art and objects that we have to expand in the county, and that we'll have our residents in the county to be able to see them. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't really have a closing, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that will pass 3-0. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Beauty and the Beast is coming to the Art Center soon, so you can go out and see it.
Oh, well, maybe we should have a field trip for that. Okay, So the last committee that we wanted to discuss specifically before we talk about the overall recommendations was REDC, and we have Buddy Reiser here to answer questions that we might have on that. And I think we also had a response from REDC in our supplemental item. I think we did. Well, we could, Mr. Reiser, do you want to just give a summary on the supplemental response from REDC? Does that sound?
Yeah, it's in section 8 of your staff report, and that starts on page 10.
Thank you.
The board posed 4 topics for consideration at the REDC meeting. The first was around East-West connection, and REDC did quite a long brainstorming session and came up with some suggestions. None of these were vetted or really discussed in depth. They were just more of a brainstorming session. DED has already implemented many of those things, including the farmer trading cards, events, the farm tours, and a lot of those kinds of events. I think we can, at future REDC meetings, spend more time kind of digging down a little deeper in this, because it actually does get to programming, which we think is a good thing for RED to spend time on. Monetizing land without building and development. The REDC spend most of their time talking about the PDR program and trying to find ways to do that. They also discussed the possibility of having businesses requiring more land, larger parcels, or at least encouraging larger parcels for agricultural businesses. The staff would respond to that by saying that we would want to understand if how many businesses that disqualifies, because many of the small businesses would have a hard time making numbers work if it was required to be on large parcels. And we spent a lot of time working on building businesses, and for us, I've always said that to me, that economic development is probably the best land use tool we have when it comes to Western Loudon, finding ways to continue to grow, and especially around the agriculture economy. REDC membership categories. REDC stated that they were not interested in consolidating categories or making any changes to the membership. DED supports regular review of the membership for all of our advisory groups. And we listed for your information the 8 clusters of business development that we work with, and would suggest that all of those have membership coverage. And finally, Department of Planning and Zoning staff support. We have been very pleased with Planning and Zoning's willingness to attend meetings when there were questions in advance. DPZ has stated that it is tough for them to just come to meetings, because each part of a DPZ meet or staff would need to have different categories to cover, some planning, some zoning, and without having these questions posed in advance, it makes it really tough for them to be able to come. And REDC has stated that they think that is not sufficient, because that doesn't help doesn't fit into their workflow, is I believe their word. One thing that did come up is that in the current bylaws, there is a position for rural planner on the REDC. In practice, that has always been a member of DPZ, though I believe that staff would recommend that that either is taken out of the bylaws, or if there is another way to cover that, then that would be good too. So that is basically an overview of their responses to the questions posed by this committee.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Glass, do you have any questions for Mr. Reiser? Okay. Madam Chair, do you have any questions for Mr. Reiser?
I do. I wish they were here today. I wish Ms. Foltman was here, but I'm sure you'll relay these questions. My first and easiest question is, I understand that they don't want to take away any of the standing committees, but I would ask, would they consider adding one more, a representative from the UAS community industry in REDC?
Madam Chair, what's UAS?
Oh, Unmanned Aeronautical Systems, drones. Drones. I learned that acronym. That's this past Friday.
And you're just rolling it off, expecting all of us to know it when you just learned it.
The language I talk all the time. That's just who I am. For reasons that we've already discussed, when we talk about monetizing land in Western Loudoun County, it's almost impossible to think of a better way to not build on a piece of land. I mean, more than putting land in conservation easement and all that, this industry is just groundbreaking in so many ways. But I would wonder if they would consider adding that as one of their standing committees, a person in their standing committees. Mr. Reiser, I actually, Ms. Brixman and I had this discussion earlier. I actually would not support taking out a person from the planning department as part of the standing or a person who should attend the meeting. I'm gonna be really, really blunt in this conversation. I think the issue is your office doesn't have to be there as much as it is there. the planning office should be there more, and it shouldn't be that we double what you do and half what they do. It should be kind of even, because your office doesn't need to be in every meeting if they're talking about land use. Now, I do think and understand that for REDC, land use is economic development, but there are whole meetings where that's all that they're talking about, and your office is not a good use of that. And so I actually believe that, what might be helpful is for REDC to say in advance, as part of their agenda, what they're going to talk about if it is a planning and land use issue, so that the planning and land use department knows who to send for that meeting. And on those moments, maybe they can adjust their agenda. So if they know that the agenda is going to be primarily planning and land use, your office need not go. And vice versa. If it's going to be more ED, their office need not go. But to take them away is not the answer. To balance it out seems to be more the answer. I just don't believe you all need to be sitting there all the time when they're having those discussions. And maybe REDC giving a clear agenda about what's going to be discussed would be more the way to go about that. Thoughts?
A couple of things there. First of all, that is what we have suggested to them, and their response has been that does not work in their workflow. They just want somebody to be at the meeting to answer questions if they come up. Philosophically, I do not believe that staff should be on advisory groups. I think that's a challenge, especially if it's going to be a voting member, as all of the advisory positions are with REDC. And then it comes back to what is the purpose. I understand why the chair says that land preservation is an important part of REDC. That's not what it says in the bylaws and the mission statement. So I would argue that is not the right place, though you are correct in saying that is the main thing that they have talked about for the last 3 or 4 years since.
And I wouldn't say so much land preservation, but how land is used is part of I don't think you can separate how land is used from the economic impacts of land in Western Loudoun County. Perhaps they should change the bylaw so that a staff member is not a voting member, because you would just be just like a staff member to every other body. For every other body, there is a staff member that attends. They are there, they are part of it, but they're not a voting member. I think of being a voting member, you're right. That doesn't seem like a logical thing to me either. So maybe that's a change that should be made. But I am more than willing to have a discussion with REDC, and I have great respect for and a good relationship with their chair. I'm more than willing to have a discussion about what demands on staff time should look like, and how the relationship could be more streamlined and you all's time used more efficiently if they give an agenda so you know what to expect in a meeting. I'm more than happy to have that discussion with them. I think that is a reasonable request if they're going to not only ask for staff from one department but 2 departments to have that discussion. I have no issue at all having that discussion with them. But I do think I think the over-reliance on your department and an under-reliance on the department that they spend most of their time talking about those issues is probably important. So, I don't know if we need motions for some of these things, like maybe the voting member the staff not be a voting member, but I am fine with those motions.
Mr. Yudd corrects me that is not a voting member. It's
not
an
a voting
advisory member. It's
an advisory member. Okay, that's better. That's better, because that wouldn't make any sense at all. But anyway, so those are my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a PDR program in Loudoun County?
Not currently active. You've gotten presentations from DPZ about how to stand it up.
So we don't even have a PDR program.
But it's been deferred.
Okay, that's what I thought. So okay. Thank you. And thank you again, Buddy. I know that you've been doing yeoman's work on this and trying to kind of untangle and figure things out. I'm going to disagree just a little bit with Madam Chair. I think that a council that is called Rural Economic Development Council should spend more of their time, like your staff should be the one that they are coming to more rather than planning and zoning, because it is supposed to be economic development. But I love the idea. I agree with you. I think that staff deserves to know whether they need to be there or not. And it is fair to ask a board or committee or commission to have an agenda enough in advance so that we know if a rural planner needs to be there. I would advocate for a more of an on-demand role for the rural planner rather than a permanent seat for a rural planner, because you don't always know exactly what the topic is. And I think that, part of our job as a committee is to make sure that staff's time is used wisely and efficiently. And if they're there, a rural planner is there at every single meeting and not contributing or advising, for 8 out of the 10 meetings of the year, I think that's a waste of staff's time. So I would advocate for what you were suggesting, and that is, if you have questions at your next meeting on a certain topic, we will send staff. If we know that you don't have questions on a certain topic, we are not going to send staff. Our staff is completely stretched, and so I think that's fair. I think that is fair. Yeah, and we get to anyway. So I like the idea, and Buddy, maybe you can agree or disagree. I like the idea of the incorporating something about monetizing land without residential development being part of the mission or the bylaws. Does that make sense to you?
No, absolutely, and I think that largely that has been, in my 15 years here, that has been what has been the accepted up until the last few, when the focus was around land use.
Okay, I'm going to have a little bit of a wrap up on what I think the recommendation should be. Now, we already talked about your staff has spent 300 hours in the last year with REDC, and you told me recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, that 60% of your marketing budget has been spent on rural economic development. Is that accurate?
That is, because so much of, we do mostly targeted marketing for, our proactive clusters, and rural Loudon is actually more about consumer, and consumer marketing obviously is much more expensive when you have the Take Loudon Home and the farm tours and the all the programming that we do there in Western Loudon, the marketplace, things like that.
But what percentage of our county GDP, for lack of a better word, does the rural economy produce?
I'm not sure I have that information. We are preparing an item to go to the Finance Committee probably in the fall that digs into that. It isn't really tracked that way, but we have to get into it a little bit more. But in advance of that study, I would hesitate to give an exact number, but it's certainly not a huge number.
Is it more than 5%?
I would say it's probably somewhere around there, but again, without doing any, it's been a huge lift to get to that number.
Yeah.
So I would hesitate to give a number at this point.
Listen, I think that what Visit Loudon is doing is beautiful work, and I do enjoy. The website is beautiful. The Bring Loudon Home is beautiful. I went to the soccer game the other day, and I brought Loudon home, like a lot of it. So I think that it's it is really a gem for us. But I think we need to be a little bit smarter on the amount of time and dollars we spend there. And visiting with a restaurant in Sterling the other day really brought that home for me, because she's been struggling, and so it kind of hurts my heart when I feel like we're spending all these marketing dollars, and then we have struggling restaurants in Sterling that probably could use some exposure and attention. Does REDC, let me ask you this question. Did DED make recommendations in the 2019 general plan?
We were, as part of staff, we had recommendations. REDC also made their own recommendation.
Okay. But as far as you know, it's not REDC's mission to implement the general plan, or DED's
That's correct.
mission. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Does REDC have an annual work plan?
For the last few years, they have not had an annual work plan.
Okay. And then do they, I think maybe they do, but you just said it's hard to get to the numbers, but do they report out like you do on the success of economic development efforts in the county and what it has produced? Does REDC have their own sort of report out like that?
We have, anecdotally, as part of our monthly report, REDC, an advisory group doesn't really do that in the same way that the department does.
Mm-hmm.
We incorporate that in. As I said, and you could ask the Commissioner of Revenue about this, it's really tough to get to the same level of information specifically to the rural economy because there are properties that are in tax abatement for, land use. Their farms are not, barns are not used. If they're used for agriculture, they're not taxed. Some equipment is, and it's a really complex thing that we've taken a lot of time to try to get to the bottom of. So
that's interesting. Okay.
But REDC does come twice a year to Finance Committee.
Okay. I guess I'm not quite sure how to get to this, knowing that it's difficult to get to the numbers, but what I really would like to see is a body like REDC, who's supposed to be advising and counseling, kind of report out on their success of monetizing land without residential development. I don't know how we could do that in the bylaws. If maybe we can give that some thought. Anyway, and then let's see, I have a couple other questions. You talked about voting members. I think it sounds to me like you have some concern over some certain slots on the council that are voting that maybe should be more advisory. Could you speak to that a little bit?
I guess, I look at the EDAC model where there are standing advisories that do not have a vote. I think that my biggest concern is advisory members that are on that are not ever replaced, that can be on forever, that have a vote and sometimes control the narrative a little bit.
Okay. Lastly, you were recommending that there were 8 industries represented. Can you explain a little bit why you selected or why you think those 8 industries would be the best to be represented?
Yeah, I think this was in response to the clusters as we work them in our department. This is how we define, when we're doing our business development work on the rural economy. But I think REDC sees value in having some other people on there that we don't necessarily work with from a business development standpoint. Mm-hmm. And that's why REDC chose not to address any changes to their membership.
Got it. And then the Small Business Development Office, is that still going to be in existence?
Small Business Development Center is still going to be in existence, but they're changing their model to a more virtual model.
Okay.
for regionally. So.
Okay. Do you think it still makes sense for I think it was the executive director of the small business. Do you think it makes sense for that person to be on the REDC?
They've never attended.
They've never attended. Okay. So they must. I guess that's not adding value. Yeah. And then, to your knowledge, do you know if the county administrator has been going?
The county administrator himself hasn't gone, but I do know on occasion assistant county administrators have come to the meetings, yes.
But I think it would be fair to say that, you can represent the county, right? Like you are the person that can represent the county when it comes to economic development.
Yeah,
That would be
I know that there is a position in both EDAC and REDC for county administration.
Okay, okay, great. I think those were all of my questions on this topic. I do have some things I'd like to share with staff as to what I think should be our recommendations out of committee. It looks like Chair Randall has her light on again.
I do. I have some follow-ups, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I mean, just like all of our other commissions and committees, REDC is a group of volunteers. Like, they're not paid, and so how they would do something, how they would give a report on monetizing land without residential development, I'm not sure why we ask them to do stuff that we don't ask other groups to do, not to mention whether or not development, housing happens on their land outside of by right, that's up to the board, right? Which we know it doesn't happen on the land except for by right, because we haven't approved a house on the land in 11 years. And so clearly they're figuring out how to monetize their land. We just want to help them do it without building. But I don't believe we should, ask this group of volunteers to have, come up with these numbers and stats and things that we don't ask other completely volunteer boards to do. And so I just want to be, I know your thrust is, I say this all the time, I'm the chair of the county. Western Loudon County is about 16% of the population, about 80% of my emails. I get it. I get it. They're organized, and that's okay. But we still should respect that they can only do so much, even with that. And maybe one of the things that can happen first before we do anything else is, again, I have a good relationship and great respect for Ms. Foltman. I am happy to sit down with her, have a discussion about, does she think, and about what she thinks about some of these things. I whenever we're talking about one of our citizen-based boards, I do want to, bring them in first before we start making wholesale changes, because there may be something that I don't quite understand of why they're doing what they're doing. So, they have lots of ask. Maybe they could have less ask and less demands on the county. I get that and I appreciate that, but I'm always having discussions before we do make changes would be something I think would be helpful, Madam Chair.
Totally agree. But maybe not the numbers, but I think is ACOI voluntary, and they do an annual report, right?
Part staff does that to a large degree.
Yeah, the liaisons for the committee would assist in the preparation of the annual reports based on the input the committee members provide.
Okay, so maybe kind of folding it into Buddy's reports might make sense with Buddy's staff.
That might make sense, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, anything else, Supervisor Glass? Okay. So I am not today, which is amazing that I'm not freezing. The only other thing the only other thing I wanted to confirm was I thought I saw that the membership is, there's no term limits on the memberships on REDC, correct?
In 2019, we added term limits.
Oh, okay.
But reset them all so they each have 2 terms.
That's right. I read about that ad nauseum. Thank you for reminding me that I did. Okay. Yeah, we do. Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah, because I was thinking if we do manage, and I would like staff to look at this, if we do manage to pare down, and I don't know that we'll get to the 8 clusters that Buddy is recommending, but if we do manage to pare down, if there's term limits, then other folks can come on, but other folks can also always be invited to come if REDC is talking about their specific industry that's not included in the 8. So I really do think for efficiency and for staff time that paring it down to the 8 industries that economic development has identified seems to make sense to me instead of 17. But again, I agree with you. We can have a conversation with them. I also
we discussed having the one more, the UAS.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, if Buddy thinks that that's a good idea, I don't know, but I agree with you.
We have that position on EDAC, but I think that they could fill it with a ad hoc member or one of the general members, but certainly it's something worth having the conversation around.
So let's include that as we look over the overall membership and industry alignment. I would like our committee to recommend that we eliminate the county administrator as a permanent seat on there. The county administrator does not go, and I don't know that the county, actually the county administrator sits on one other committee/board in the entire county, and I think that having Buddy there or his team there makes sense without requiring the county administrator to be there. Also, I think that we should look into changing the DED designation to the director and or assignee so that it's not Buddy. I think that we should remove, well, I just talked about this, remove executive director of the Small Business Development Center because they don't go, they're not contributing. And I can send all these to you guys. And hopefully they'll come in the item for June and we can look it over. I think that we should remove the Agricultural District Advisory Committee seat. It's a very narrow state mandated seat, and they don't add to the economic development aspect of the committee. As Buddy said, all other organizational designees, such as Colt Visit Loudon, should be made advisory members in the bylaws instead of voting members, as Buddy recommended. I would like to see the bylaws revised so that the mission is to, as we said, recommend and advise ways to monetize rural county land without residential development. I would like staff to look at that would be under the number one of the 6 points they have in their bylaws. I think that number 2 and number 3 kind of say the same thing in the bylaws. Number 2, I think, is sufficient because it says to furnish information and provide recommendations on policies and programs. I think that's great. I think that's a good part of their mission. But then it says review projects and policies. And I think if we keep that in, that it should be as directed by the board. So if the Board of Supervisors wants them to review projects and policies and ask them for feedback, then that's when it happens. And then there was one other, the annual work plan I think would be a great idea. Maybe we can discuss that with REDC. And then the other thing is that kind of struck me was the implementation of the general plan. That's in their bylaws, and that is to, help with the implementation of the general plan. And I don't know that we have any other body in the county that helps with the quote unquote implementation of the general plan. I think that is planning and zoning, and I actually think that's the Board of Supervisors that does that when we vote on land use. And we have another whole other, ZOR working on the implementation under zoning for the general plan. So those would be my suggestions for staff to look at. If my colleagues agree, it can be by consensus. I don't think we need a motion.
Madam Chair, there's a couple of things I would ask you to consider.
Yeah.
The statement on monetizing land, instead of saying without putting houses, we might say without putting permanent structures, because it's not just houses. I mean, if a structure is a structure, and if a structure is on the land, you can't. If it's a permanent structure, you're not going to be able to monetize that land. It may not be a house; it may be some other permanent structure.
But don't a lot of businesses have to have a permanent structure?
Well, we're not talking about places that. So, how I hear that is not. It's not about a business. It's about. So, for instance, if the business is a ropes course, and a ropes course doesn't have a permanent structure on it, but then one day they want to build a gym on the ropes course, that's a permanent structure, right? Which actually could be an issue.
But wouldn't they have to come to us for approval for that?
Well, that may be something that we have to put in. I don't know, because not always. So
Yeah.
we meant that. We want to have that
in general,
discussion.
let's work on it with staff.
Yeah, okay. That's because
we don't want to have a whole zoning conversation.
No, we don't.
But I agree.
We're making these sweeping zoning decisions. I'm sure the zoning department would love if Ms. Brixman and I sit up here and make all the zoning decisions. I do, I do think that maybe instead of saying no person from small business, maybe say, like you said, for Mr. Reiser, a person from the small business, but are their designee. So it doesn't have to be their person, but their designee. I totally agree that the discussion about somebody from the county administrator's office, that's ridiculous.
Right,
because
right.
Mr. Reiser is already there.
Well, actually, nobody has ever gone from the small
It
business
does. Well,
maybe if they have small business questions, somebody's from Buddy's office could go.
but Buddy's office is not the Small Business Development Center. It's that you're talking about, right, Mr. Reiser?
There is no executive director of the Small Business Development Center in Loudoun County anymore.
So that's yeah.
regional
So let's do
position.
this. When staff, when you're looking at that, let's see if there's any other seat that can cover that, since there's no executive director of the small business.
Yep.
So we can maybe eliminate that position as long as we think that we have any of the small business questions they might have covered.
Yep.
on
And I think
another
that's
seat.
about
Okay.
it. But,
Okay.
Right. But we we're not voting on these tonight. We can have these
Yeah,
conversations.
none of this is.
Yep. Thank you.
It all comes back June 21st.
Yep.
And we can also make changes then.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
We're going to need
Absolutely. I don't think your mic's on.
Sorry, we want to make sure we understand the direction of the committee so we can follow up appropriately. So when we're talking about membership or membership groups, the committee is asking that we look at unmanned aircraft systems to somehow participate in our EDC. And I think Buddy made some comments about how a member is at EDAC right now on that? Okay. So we'll come back with some discussion around that one. The elimination of the county administrator as a non-voting standing advisory member was raised. We were not clear, though, on Small Business Development Center because Executive Director, Small Business Development Center was referenced, and Buddy said there is no Executive Director, Small Business Development Center, but I think you're still trying to ask for small business issues to be addressed.
So the idea is the seat can be, since they're not attending and there's no executive director, that's an inappropriate seat to have in the first place. And then if we can discuss with Buddy's office if small business concerns of the Rural Economic Development Council can be covered, for example, by his office, just to make sure it's covered as we consider eliminating the seat.
Okay.
I think it should be eliminated to pare it down, but Chair Randall's concerned that they have the information they need when it comes to small business development. Yes, Buddy.
I would only say that the Small Business Development Center is going into a virtual mode and is only really doing counseling. They're not having a policy voice. That's one of the reasons why we have asked for the extra positions around small business, because we believe we'll deliver more of the small business programming.
So I think the best way to handle it would be the same way that we're handling the agenda, right? So we eliminate that seat because they're only advising individual businesses, it sounds like. So we eliminate the seat, and then if RADC does agendas and they have specific need for information on small businesses, then perhaps Buddy's office arranges for somebody with that expertise to attend a meeting. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I would say that most of the small business counseling historically and almost exclusively has been with extension and economic development for the rural economy.
Okay, and they are on there. Extension's
That's
on
correct,
there. Yeah. Extension, and what was the second one you said?
And our department.
In your department. Okay, so I think it's covered. Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Yed. More
Then
clarification on...
Under Director, Department of Economic Development or designee, I think is what you were asking. Remove ADAC, and ADAC's Agricultural District Advisory Committee is listed under voting member, and require an annual work plan. Advise ways to monetize land without, and that was confusing to us because there was a discussion initially about without residential development, and then it went to buildings. And
Permanent
so,
structures.
Okay.
So I guess we would look for staff's or Buddy's advice on the best way to word that in their mission.
Would the type of structure be of discernment? Like, is it a residential structure or a commercial structure that could be part of a winery or
The
a?
question is really, will the structure come to us? I mean, will the not the structure doesn't need to come to us. Would the issue come to us for voting? That's part of my Primac soil concerns is permanent structure and that kind of,
And that really is at the crux of a lot of the questions that we have, because the zoning isn't always clear, and it depends on, is it a rural use, is it not a rural use?
Yep.
If it's a rural use, I believe it doesn't come to you. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we answered Charles's question. So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, because I'm trying to think about how to do it too, but if you have a suggestion.
So I don't know if I have a suggestion. I think just to clarify. So obviously we don't want homes built but those come to us if it's not by right anyway. If there are permanent structures that is, especially if it's going to disturb Primac soil, can we? I guess I'm saying we want to know if those would come to us. To be honest, if those decisions would come to us, would be a discussion I want to have, because really it's not about housing. We don't really vote on housing in rural Loudoun County. We don't get applications for housing in rural Loudoun County. Those are all by right. But we may get houses for applications. I mean, we may get what comes to us is the commercial use is what comes to us actually.
Yes. And
we want to know what that commercial use is. Is it necessary to have a permanent structure for the commercial use? What that looks like. So that's the bigger issue, more than houses. It's permanent structures that are more commercial uses that need to come, that we want to know about, because we don't vote on applications for housing.
I guess.
But I think we're getting a little bit. Sorry, Buddy. I think we're getting a little too much into the weeds, because alls we're talking about is sort of a mission statement for rural economic development. And go ahead, Buddy.
Well, first of all, I think we could propose something that would meet the committee's.
Perfect. Let's have Buddy.
Demands. But I at some point we should discuss whether processing fits into what you would like, because right now we are actively trying to get processing that will allow our farmers to plant more, yield more, make more. So those kinds of force multipliers, to me, are supportive of the rural economy, though it would require a permanent structure. So,
but it would come to us anyway.
In most instances, that absolutely would, yes.
Let's work on it with Buddy, what we think that line should say, and we have to discuss it again anyway on June 21st. Does that sound okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Two other points. One was there was a comment about the general plan, and we believe that might not be correct, that the rural economic development business strategy is what's referred to in the work. So when you say general plan, can you clarify where you're getting that from?
Sure. It's under number 1. The purpose of the council is as follows: recommend to the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors a rural economic development strategy to carry out the recommendations contained in the revised general plan, coordinate the implementation of the plan between and amongst the Department of Economic Development, Loudoun Chamber, Visit Loudoun, and other agencies. So I guess what I'm getting at is the implementation of the revised general plan is not the responsibility of the Rural Economic Development Council. Maybe I'm reading that wrong.
Okay, no, that helped. We will clarify.
Okay.
And then I think there was one other statement regarding all other positions should be made advisory. What,
So there are, I had the, I don't have their bylaws in front of me, but there are a number of positions. I think it's Visit Loudon, Colt, and a couple other that are voting. Then it wouldn't be, they should be advisory.
yeah, we think we've got it. We think
It's
it
in there.
was the section dealing with voting members, A through D.
Yes.
Soil and water conservation, Loudoun County Farm Bureau, Visit Loudon, and then that's where Ag District Advisory was, but your other recommendation would have been to,
Overall, have them be advisory.
correct. Okay, I think we got it.
Okay. Excellent. So thank you, Mr. Reiser. Appreciate it. Our last section, and we're not getting out as early as I had hoped, but our last section, my colleagues, was it would be pertaining to the second motion, but I wanted to have an opportunity if you had any questions about any of the recommendations that staff had in the item, and or the draft bylaws. And then we'll have a little bit of a wrap up if we have any loose ends. So do either of my colleagues have questions about the recommendations from staff in the item? So those are the italicized ones at the end. No, we're done with REDC. We're only doing we don't have recommendations for REDC yet. This is for the recommendations in the item and the bylaws. If we have any questions I'm happy with the recommendations. I'm happy with the proposed draft bylaws. I think Supervisor Glass might have one question on the bylaws.
Well, actually, I have a few. I just want to clarify that the suggested changes outlined in the different sections of the packet, such as the bylaw amendments for the disability, housing, transit, and family services, et cetera, boards will that be included in the final packet of recommendations?
The direction is to ask the bodies to go through their revisions that will come subsequently. So you will probably not see them all because it'll move forward throughout the next year. However, they will be in accordance with the template that is being provided.
Okay. Thank you. I would also like to see a recommendation for the disbandment of the Lyme Disease Commission and the absorption of their work under the Health Commission. It's my understanding that the Lyme Disease Commission has only met 3 or 4 times since 2019, so it seems to me that their work is being done in other ways. That being said, I do think the information they created and the work they did over the last decade has been extremely important. So I would like to see it absorbed into the Health Commission. That way nothing that was done has been lost, but there's at least one less committee that needs to be staffed by the county. The last comment I have is with regard to the standardization of bylaws. In addition to all the areas referenced in the packet, I really want to stress that I think it's important to have a clearer and easier way of removing any advisory body member. I know that currently the process is very difficult for removing a member for non-attendance in meetings. Due to notification requirements, it can sometimes take several months to remove a member. I think it's important that the process be made smoother and easier for the committee chair and staff. Additionally, I think it would be beneficial to have certain ways to remove advisory body members for reasons other than attendance as well. And the recently created Environmental Commission includes language in its bylaws that states all members serve at the pleasure of the board. The board may remove any commission member for cause at any time. Language like this in the bylaws and possibly changes to board policy should be included in this committee's recommendations. I can think of several situations where a member may regularly attend meetings, but not a beneficial member of the body. And I think this would help eliminate situations where a member may need to be removed for a variety of reasons. That's all I have.
Good. So I think one clarification, Supervisor Glass, and I think that is that the language that you're recommending at the pleasure of the board language, I think, yes, I completely agree it should be in our draft bylaws, but I think that we can only implement that or have that happen for committees, boards, and commissions that the county has started. That's what you're okay. Like, you don't want to try and do that for like state.
No,
right?
no,
Just
no,
for the
no,
county
no,
ones
just for
that
the
we
county.
have I keep wanting to say developed, but that we have created. Because I know that we don't necessarily, by state law, have control over how those members may be removed.
That's correct, and we did include language in the draft template regarding the points Supervisor Glass was making. So I think we're there or close to being there, and language regarding the removal of members for cause, malfeasance, and nonfeasance, that language has been added to the draft template.
Okay.
I think that we would like something similar, though, that to what the Environmental Commission has, like at the pleasure of the board.
Okay, we'll compare that one to the template.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And I agree with that bylaws recommendation, and I also agree with the Lime Commission recommendation. I think that the Lime Commission has done really important work. I think that they were here and said that they have in fact completed their 10-point mission, and it's completed, and that most of what happens is programmatic, and that it could be handled under the Health Commission and the Health Department. I also recently had a long conversation with my Lime Commission appointee who said they're having difficulty with quorum since the emergency order has ended, and that she also felt that their work they're doing is not necessarily anything new. There's nothing really new to advise on. We've investigated, we've done the 10-point plan. We know what we need to do kind of year over year. So I would absolutely agree with that recommendation. So I think if committee members are okay with it, I'll just go to a motion and maybe we can talk in the motion. Is that okay? Okay, great. Because, I'll do this motion. Actually, let me just do a couple more wrap-ups to make sure that we're on track with a couple things that I heard today. We want to look at the stipends for BOE. Disability Services Board, we're looking at changing it to 11 members. And then CCJB, we're looking at terms coinciding with ours and or changing it so that the members stay on until somebody's reappointed. Those were the three other things that I think came out of this meeting. Just wanted to make sure that staff was on board with all those. And then I will go to a motion, and I think that's all we have. I move that the Ad Hoc Committee on Advisory Boards, Commissions, and Committees direct staff to continue with Step 4 of the approved work plan by formulating and drafting an Ad Hoc Committee recommendation for consideration at its next meeting and presentation to the full Board of Supervisors. Second. Thank you. I don't really have any more comments. I agree with all the recommendations staff has developed so far and the bylaws. Really excited about the changes that we're making to some of the committees and excited about the arts plan. Madam Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Lime Commission gets a dedicated source of revenue. And so if they are to be absorbed under another body, we would have to have a discussion of what happens and how that works with that dedicated source of revenue. And the source of revenue is used for materials. And so we'd have to have a discussion about, does it become a subcommittee? And if so, does the subcommittee receive that source of revenue, or does the full committee and it just gets doled out? I have floated this before and got pilloried so maybe something has vastly changed in the past 2 years since I floated the idea of doing what Miss Glass just said, and I haven't spoke to anyone on the Lyme Disease Commission, but I gotta tell you, when I said this before, it was bad. And so I am not going to support that until I talk to somebody and know that that's what they're ready to do right now, because it certainly wasn't 2 years ago when I floated this idea, or maybe 3 years ago when I floated this idea. But even if we do have to figure out the source of revenue and how that would work.
Is that everything?
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah, no problem. Absolutely, fully agree. If they're getting a dedicated source of revenue, we'll have to figure that out. I would imagine it would just go to the Health Commission. And did you want to comment on that?
It's in the Health Department's budget, and the Health Department provides support to the Health Commission. So we would lay all that out.
Okay.
This recommendation.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that we had both doctors here saying when they were here. Yeah, I think Madam Chair has PTSD. Anyway, no further comment from me on our motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
This is just for the recommendations.
It's for the motion.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes 3-0. And I think, committee members, we will need one more meeting in June to formalize the Ad Hoc Committee's final recommendations to the full board. Staff is working with board offices to determine a meeting date in June, and we'll make a formal announcement once confirmed. Do you have everything you need?
We actually confirmed that date with you this afternoon.
June 21st.
Yeah, so
yes.
June 21st at 3:30, right
I am
before the business.
nervously saying okay to 3:30 on June 21st. I know. And staff has everything you need right now. I'm sorry, I meant to come back to you for questions.
We do.
Okay. All right. With that, the meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee is adjourned. Thank you.